Welcome to Interesting Enough. I am Nolan Todd. Thank you guys for joining us once again. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you. Of course, we are on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. If this is your first time joining us, we got a special guest. We haven't had him on in maybe last college football season. Man, it's been a while, but filling in for Trey. Trey couldn't make it, but we wanted to get into college football with a lot of news happening, so we figured we'd bring our old recurring guest, Robert Vinson. He's actually the host of the College Football Extravaganza, so go check that out. I'll let him plug it for you. But Rob, man, how you feeling?
Hey, I'm feeling good, man. And week 11 now for college football. It's already over, pretty much. It's
Yeah.
I was talking to my girlfriend, and like last month, she was like, "How long's football last in pro and college?" I was like, "At least till February," and she was like, "Oh my God," she was already tired of it.
Yeah.
I was like, "It's not that long. Don't act like it's that long."
I was gonna say the actual correct answer is not long enough. Like
Yeah.
that's what it feels like when it's like the dog days of summer and all we got is baseball. So it's like, yeah, it's not long enough. So no, I mean, we're actually gonna have you. We obviously you and I talked about. We're gonna have you actually on for the preview of college football, but then it kind of snuck up on us. We had some other NFL stuff to get to. So I mean, it's kind of late in the season to have you here, but as unexpected, we do got a lot of college football news besides just the rankings, which we'll get into. So we got to talk about the Connor Stallions and Michigan situation. So that just lined up perfectly to have you on it and talk about this. And then of course today more news came out, which we'll get into. But for people that are listening that are not too briefed on it, I'm sure they heard a little bit about it. Connor Stallions obviously, was purchasing tickets over a couple years, essentially, you know, was quote unquote sign stealing, which by the way isn't illegal, but he's taking video and everybody can fill themselves in the details on that, but it's obviously a big deal. So, even today, I think I saw right before we jumped on the pod, Michigan's kind of fighting back and threw a couple teams' names under the bus to the Big Ten and basically let them know, hey, they were kind of doing something similar to that. So, Robert, I'm gonna let you go really anywhere with this. I don't have a too specific a question, but really what I wanted to know is there any way to avoid a situation if Michigan, you know, does what they're expected to do and get to the college football playoff, even go ahead and finish the whole deal and win the championship? Is there any way we can avoid an asterisk on the season? Because I feel like that's where it's leading to if it gets to that point. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, there will be, but like we're seeing with Michigan fighting back, like you said, they're throwing Ohio State and Purdue under the bus. Mind you, Purdue had their signs and still got waxed by 21 points. So,
Right? Yeah.
so it's like, good job trying to steal those. Yeah, I think everyone does it, and maybe Michigan was doing it a little too good. You know,
Yeah.
but like I'm still not sure if that was Connor Stallions on the sideline with the Ray-Bans, the Central Michigan sideline.
That photo is
Yeah,
the photo is hilarious.
yeah, it's like, and he wasn't wearing Adidas shoes. It was like it went deeper than that. He was wearing like Nike shoes. The school was like an Adidas school or something like that,
Hmm.
and he had like one of the Ray Bans with the blue lights. It's like is this going that deep? I don't know. This guy had a Michigan manifesto. It was pretty crazy. I mean, I'm entertained by it. What I'm thinking is, if they are stealing signs, everyone else is doing it too, and you can put an asterisk as much as you want. I hate when you go back and you take Heisman's away, like Reggie Bush had his Heisman taken away.
Right.
Um, you know, the vacated wins for like Joe Paterno, although that might have been warranted, but you know,
Right.
stuff like that. It's like it happened.
Yeah.
It already happened, and there's nothing you can do to take the memory or the actual victory away in the moment. So I think doing that is kind of ridiculous. Now, um, should teams be paying staff to go to other in conference or out of conference playoff contender games and record? That's got to be up for some regulation. But who's going to regulate it? I don't want the NCAA to do that. I hate what the NCAA does when they suspended Tez Walker for North Carolina for
Right.
transferring that. I just want the NCAA out of college football. And right now with the college football playoff committee, it's kind of bifurcated now. It's not just one sole arbiter of bureaucracy. Really, it's the playoff, and they said they're not going to do anything about it, and the NCAA said they're not going to do anything about it right now either. So I guess we'll see what happens. And the Big Ten said they might do something about it, but then Michigan said they'd sue them, and Jim Harbaugh's still going to be coaching.
Right, right. And actually, that was going to be my next question because my whole thing with the decision was whose lap is the decision going to fall on, right? Because I think we can all agree at this point, nobody wants the NCAA to make really any decisions for that matter. I mean, we can have a longer discussion about the NCAA even existing for the most part. I mean, again, that can go a lot longer than we
Yeah,
have
they
time
don't
on the pocket.
need to. They
Right,
don't need to.
right.
Just
So
put
that
the
can go a
old
lot
white dude
longer.
just put the
But
old white dudes in the back, just not knowing, not being in touch with the times, honestly.
right, right, yeah. I mean, like there, the NCAA stubbornness almost, and I know like a lot of people listen to this doesn't watch baseball, but it's like the only thing I can think about more stubborn old white dudes is baseball, and like in terms of like not wanting to adjust rules and stuff like that. So like that's what I think of the NCAA. But in terms of the decision making, we know the NCAA will drag its feet with stuff like that. The Big Ten's not going to want to make a decision on that because Michigan's their big money maker. So it's like a tough spot to come up with. And then, of course, you have already alluded to it. When we've seen decisions be made in the past with any allegations, right? Like you can go to the Joe Paterno stuff, which is more extreme. You can go to the the Reggie Bush stuff you mentioned. What happens every single time is the crappiest part, which is the decision gets made, and then the people that have to, suffer the consequences are the people that had nothing to do with the situation, which ends up just being the kids that are like that are still like on scholarship or coming into the school, right? So
Right.
like that's the problem I think with the Michigan situation. Now, to be clear, and as you mentioned, the Connor Stallions thing is it's so funny to me because it's almost like I always think about like the OJ Simpson thing, like when he kind of wrote that book when he was like, oh, I didn't do the crime, but like if I would do it, this is how it would be. The
Yeah.
Connor Stallions thing is kind of like, it's not the same type of case, but it's like even if he's not guilty, right? Because like you said, the pictures, like we don't know if it's him, stuff like that. It's just like everything that this guy has talked about or does, like basically feels like it could be him. Like essentially, like you said, writing a manifesto with your love for the university, kind of odd. Like everybody loves. I know you love Florida, but like not to that level. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so like there's just
But
like
I
things
don't know.
that
I kind of lit up a joint the other day, and I was like, you know what? I need to write my Florida manifesto.
right,
I'll do it
exactly.
now.
It's
I'm a disciple. He motivated me. I'm gonna start stealing signs.
right, right. So like some of the stuff that Constantinine's done, and of course, he's talked about him going to the naval or into the military and his training and stuff like that, and like that's part of the things that he used. It's I mean, just if you people read these details, it's kind of wild. So my whole thing with the decision being made, I don't want it to be a situation where there's going to be an asterisk on the season. But if I'm a school, and I guess my question to you would be, if you're another school, so you're Ohio State maybe that's a bad example because they're a rival. You're just in any school competing, Georgia, whoever. If they beat you, I mean, isn't that something you can use as an alibi? Because I mean, it may have not directly affected on the field that game that they beat you in, but you can just always hang your hat on. Well, they should have been there in the first place. We shouldn't have played them. Like I know that's like kind of like a crappy reasoning, but isn't that something that they can use and maybe even will if we get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, they can use it and they can holler all they want, but the reality is when you get caught red-handed doing the same thing, it doesn't look good and that doesn't make your argument look good. And right now that's what Michigan's trying to say. And by no means am I on Michigan's side, obviously, like paying someone to do this. That's way above, and that's why it's outlawed in the first place, because a lot of these smaller universities can't pay staff to go around and record signals and put together spreadsheets and stuff. They just don't have the funds to
Right,
buy games to 30 different games for like 11 different schools.
right.
I mean,
Yeah,
but at the same time, um, they steal signals in other ways. So
right, and that,
every-
because that was gonna the thing. It's just something that's understood in the sport that happens all the time. I mean, I know they actually put the rule in for sign stealing in '94, and again, to be fair, when you go through the actual, like the description of the rules, sign stealing per se isn't illegal. So like when you see this is just for people listening to like when you see like the backup quarterback and stuff holding up signs and like doing signals and there's like Taylor Swift and like Katy Perry on a
oh
poster board or
yeah,
something like that's not illegal. The part that's illegal is actually videoing it, right? Or like doing in-person scouting. So like, but again, I think like you said, people kind of already know that this stuff exists, but it's kind of like one of those things where they had to make it a rule, kind of almost like with the paying players, right? Like we know players are getting paid under the table. Like now we got to have NIL, something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a solution, but it's not going to be conducive to the modern television and the new clock rules, how college football wants to go, how they have so many commercials. Just huddle up. A lot of these teams are getting signals. I mean, defense is getting the signal obviously off of the offense, and that makes sense. But if you're on the offense side, just huddle up like you used to. You know, that's
Hmm.
how old school football used to be. You get the play, you run one guy on. I mean, Spur used to run the dual quarterback system with Shane Matthews and Doug Johnson. I think you run them on and off. So that's just how you have to do it sometimes.
Yeah, and again, there's a couple things in the NCAA game that I don't know why they didn't do it, because you're gonna have to huddle up if you want to go pro, which is where most of these guys' aspirations are, at least at the high D1 level. I know some of the other schools, whatever. I mean, even the on defense, right, with the signals, like in the NFL, you're gonna have the green dot, you're gonna have the guy that's getting the headset in. So it's the same thing. So at some point, it's like it's kind of archaic to be doing it in the way you're talking about. So you're like you said, it's an easy solution. Now I know I was hearing something about the green dot situation as well. Like it comes down to similar what you were talking about with the schools and the resources. Like some schools don't have as much money as other schools, so like they got to pay to get these helmets and the technology and this and that. So like Ohio State and Georgia can get these, but like what about like Toledo and some of the other schools? You know what I mean? So it just becomes like a different situation. I think that's kind of hard to enforce, but I'm still excited to hear about it. But I'm assuming, Rob, when are you expecting a decision? Because obviously we don't think about it this year. Is you just think it's the off season, and then where do you think this lands Harbaugh? Because I know they got the extension talk with him still. So you think that changes anything?
Yeah, I don't know. And that's I've I listen to all these, college football podcasts and talk shows, and some people are saying there's going to be a decision before the game at Penn State, or there's going to be, decision at the end of the year for Harbaugh if he wants to go pro. And I don't know because they're fighting pretty hard. And at this point, like we were saying, who's going to be in charge here? And I think the more we get into NIL and the more we get into this Wild West era of college football where the NCAA is starting to fade and the playoff committee is going, I think the playoff committee is going to be in charge of some things. And I think the conferences, because they're growing in number and power, they're going to be in charge of a lot of things as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I think the conference and the schools are going to have to handle it, legally or figure out the rules and how to play that way.
yeah. And again, and that brings me to a point. I mean, I definitely want to talk about some conference realignment stuff if we had time. But speaking of the Pac-12 dissolving and now being the best conference in the sport, that's hilarious. But
Yeah,
I,
that's Pac how
right.
about that? The Pac-12 has been so entertaining this year. I mean, no, like for the most part, besides Utah and like Oregon and Washington, no defense whatsoever. But most
Yeah, absolutely no defense to
yeah,
speak of. Yeah,
most
right.
entertaining conference by far this whole year. I don't even watch Pac-12 that much, but this year I've watched all of it. It's amazing.
No, listen, and I wanted to talk about Colorado in a second too. Now that we're on the Pac-12, Trey and I were just talking about it. I've historically never stayed up for any Pac-12 games outside of the USC games, and I was like a kid with
They're
Reggie
so
Bush and
late.
stuff,
Yeah, they're
right?
so late.
Yeah, like when you're on the East Coast, right, Central, like we're not staying up for those games. Like it's got to be a reason. Like we're in SEC country, ACC. That's about it, right? Like it's a big Big Ten, whatever that, and that's about it. But it's so crazy. Like I'm watching all of these games every single week. I'm looking for Washington playing Oregon and vice versa, and USC, and then of course you got Coach Prime of Colorado. And I wanted to bring this up because I hadn't talked to you about Coach Prime, and um, I know you listen to a lot of college football content in general. So
Mm.
what's the overall feeling with Colorado? Like, what are you hearing? And I'm talking not just in terms of like, wins and losses, because obviously their season has stumbled, which is kind of expected. But I really want to know what's considered a successful season for them in terms of people that actually pay attention to college football on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, they won one game last year, and
Right,
the
right.
over under on wins and losses was 2 for Colorado this year. So I would say this overall season's a success, especially with like USC and all the teams that are really good in the Pac-12 right now. And they're competitive against UCLA last week or the week before. So I
Mhm.
like that. I like what Coach Prime is doing. I'm a big fan, honestly. And I wish Florida might go get him if Billy Napier does.
Right.
He would love to give the dagger to FSU like that. He wouldn't do it, but no, I think he's doing good, and it's just I don't know. He just came in there and did a total overhaul of their roster, and people are giving him a hard time, but it's the transfer portal. It's NIL. It's everything, and Colorado is a historically good program. Like in the '90s, early 2000, Colorado they had some guys, and they were up in the national championship. Um, talk. So he's bringing them back to that light. Now he might have got a little bit too much publicity at first, but now it's kind of simmering down. We're gonna see whenever the team gets older and see how long he stays. I don't know how long he stays there. I hope he stays for a while and makes it a program.
Okay, so that you touched on a couple of things I want to mention. So let me give you my theory on how long he stays, since you mentioned that first. Okay, so I think he's done great, as expected, and I think that, like you said, with the addition of the transfer portal, I mean, you can turn a bad school into a contender really quick. I mean, let's use USC as a good example. I mean, they were not very good 2 years ago. Lincoln Riley comes over, brings over Jordan Addison, Caleb Williams, the top receiver in the country, the top quarterback in the country, and then gets a whole bunch of recruits. And they're not in college football playoff contending, right? But they're an 8-win team, right? Like 8 to 9 win team perennially now. And then of course they've got that hotbed. Now here's my Colorado thing. Now everyone's like, well, you know, when's Dion gonna go? When's Dion gonna go? Right? I think Dion is gonna eventually leave. I can't imagine Dion or Coach Prime being at Colorado for even half a decade. So I think he stays at least another year. And my only reason for that is Travis Hunter. We obviously know Travis Hunter is one of the best players in the country, no matter any school, right? So obviously he was the number one recruit in the nation. He can't go to the NFL this year. He's got to stay at least till next year. I don't think he would leave, considering that Travis Hunter and how close they are, that he came to play for Coach Prime at Jackson State, then transferred where Coach Prime eventually got the job at Colorado. And of course, he can't transfer again with the transfer rules. I don't see a situation where he would just leave after that year. Now, if he in a year, Travis Hunter goes to the NFL, obviously both of his sons will be gone at that point if one of them doesn't already leave Shadur this year. At that point, you got to think about it's not a matter of does he not want to stay at Colorado. It's because who's going to come calling. Now, you and I both know he really wanted the Florida State gig. Obviously, that's turned for the up and up in a good way for Florida
Yeah,
State.
he might be vengeful about this too.
That was my point. Even if the Florida State thing just absolutely tanked, I actually think here's the funny thing. I actually think, obviously, he's from Florida. I think there's a situation. Let's just look. I'm a Hurricanes fan. I know you're a Florida Gators fan.
Right.
Both of our situations are not really great. I would argue Florida has a little bit better situation than what we got right now, considering we couldn't even take a knee.
You sure
But
about that? Yeah.
look. Obviously, I'm still jaded. All right, so like, let me get the off season to like worry about that. But let's say in a year and a half from now, both of our coaches are gone. Are you telling me with the resources or the money that both these, well, specifically Florida, but both of these schools can have with the recruiting bed, him being from Florida, I just don't see a situation where he could pass that up. Now, which school he chooses or whatever, that would be a hell of an offer. And if you're Florida, if you're Miami, it's a blank check, right? Like you're like, hey, come here wherever if he can get these recruits to come to Colorado, I mean, it would be a joke, and that would be the day Nick Saban and the rest of those guys retire. Because like if he gets in anywhere in that situation, it's a wrap. So that's my theory. I think in a year and a half, Travis Hunter and that crew is gone. If those jobs open up with the correct resources, that's the only situation he would move. It would have to be there, or maybe one of the schools in Texas. Just Texas got the money, but maybe we'll see with Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. But I mean, that'd be tough. That's my theory. What say you?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be very controversial. I think it's almost too controversial. I
And
don't
it'd
know.
be fighting Florida
I don't
State.
know.
You go to Florida, like that'd
Yeah.
be crazy.
Oh, dude, I have so many Florida State friends. They hate him. They hate him already, and so that would just make it even worse. So if he wanted to do that and had the money, they could do it. Um, I mean, the defense is what's getting me. If he comes back next year and Colorado has a decent defense, then that's good. He's gonna get recruits though. That's the thing. He's gonna get recruits.
Right.
Gonna have a good offense. Yeah, I don't know. I could see a situation where he also goes to the pros just because he knows
Mm.
everything. I mean, he's a one of the best, if not the best, football player of all time. So yeah,
But
he knows everything there is to know, right?
here's my only thing with the pros, though. I just feel like he has a certain level of pull with the young college students that it just. I'm not gonna
He
say,
does feel like, like the
yeah,
dad figure, like he could
yeah.
be a
I'm not gonna
great
say it
college coach.
wouldn't work. I'm not gonna disrespect him and say it just wouldn't work with grown men because I mean everyone knows Prime, right? So like he's gonna get that respect regardless. But it just feels like you said, with the attention that he gets in the limelight, and even just his rhetoric, I just feel like a lot of that just fits the college game. And by the way, in college we don't have a lot of those like high profile coaches like we used to have in the past, you know what I mean? So like he was kind of good for the sport in that way to like bring that extra excitement, regardless of if you're competing school or not. The defense thing though that you mentioned, well, that gets remedied if you go to the state of Florida. I mean, you can get all those DBs and everything you want, like team speed. You can get all that in the state of Florida. And like you said, that's going to be key because we're going to see in this offseason, he's going to get a couple, he's going to get a couple recruits that were on the bench at LSU or Alabama at some of these schools to come over to Colorado. So like like you said, if he can even just have a formidable defense, and of course the offensive line, like we haven't even talked about that. I mean, the offensive line is just a joke. I mean, so like you'd have to get those two things shored up, and then let's make it even more interesting. What if he gets these recruits, and maybe in a year and a half from now, you're looking at a team that's like projected to be a 9 or 10 win team? Then it's kind of like, man, like how do you leave that situation? Now I don't know if Colorado would ever get to that point, but I mean, even with the transfer portal, like you still got to do well with the recruiting. Do you think he can do well enough to get like a top 5 recruiting class, like competing with all these other big universities?
Yeah, I think so. I think Colorado is a premier destination, honestly. Like it's a great state. It's beautiful out there. They have a good school. I think Colorado is a place that he could make a program. So it's just one of those things. Now, depending on where they're going for the Pac-12, I guess they're going back to the Big 12. No,
Yeah, they're going. Yeah, the realignment thing. I mean, like it's like every day in the summer, it was like who's going where. But yeah, so it looks like they're going to the Big 12 now. So I guess they were kind of replacing like Texas and Oklahoma and a couple of those. So we'll see how that goes. And right on time because, like you said, the Pac-12 just got super super competitive
yeah,
really quickly. So
yeah. I mean, I don't. I think because I've been out there. I don't know if you've ever out there. I've been out to Denver, up in the mountains and stuff like that, and
mm,
it's just beautiful, man. And there's no way to describe it. And then also, you're kind of close to the West Coast if you want to be, and you're close to I guess the Midwest, so you're centralized. You can go wherever you want, pretty much.
and look, at the end of the day, I mean, how many national TV games in Colorado get at least that first half of the year? Every single one of the games are on national TV, right? So like
Yeah.
if you're a college kid like that's playing a sport, the number one thing you probably care about outside of like playing time, of course, is like being seen, right? Like in Colorado is still on prime time, like
They
no
were a
pun
wagon.
intended.
They were a wagon the first 4 weeks. I bet on them every week the first 4 weeks and won. And it was
Yeah,
it was amazing. I felt so good. Like when everyone had all the hype about TCU, you know, coming back and trying to make another run at the national championship.
hmm
Last year was a fluke for TCU, almost pretty much. They won 3 games in the final minute. One of them they had to run a field goal team on and kick it like last second. So I was like, Colorado's winning this game off the bat, and that's when I knew it was going to be a crazy college football season. When Colorado beat TCU that opening week, I was
yeah.
like, yep, this one's going to be a weird one, and it's
It's gonna be a weird year.
been a weird season. It has been.
Yeah, speaking of that, because as right before we hopped on the pod, the new college football rankings just dropped, obviously. So no change from last week. We got Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State in that order. Any issues with the rankings? I mean, and to round out the top 5 is Washington. So you got all the undefeated teams, obviously there. So I mean, it fits, numerically. But in terms of the seeding right now, I know we're going to see some of this play out. Like, you got a couple big games this weekend. Any like glaring issues with the rankings?
No, no, because like I know Florida State fans are going to complain, but you got Ohio State and Michigan right there. Michigan hasn't really played anyone that's been super good. They got Penn State this week, and that's going to be their 10th game. So we're week 11, and Michigan's finally playing a team that's ranked in the top 25 here. So that's what's going on with Michigan. But they've looked the most consistent. I know a lot of people have them at number 1. I don't see how you can with that Georgia has even had some close calls, but I think they've been playing around. I don't know, man. I think any one of these teams in the top, I'll say 8 right now, Alabama down, could win any game against another on any given day. That's just how I
Right.
feel. I think Washington has the most impressive win if you're going by overall rank and schedule because Oregon's number 6. They beat Oregon. Florida State has win over LSU, Clemson, which isn't looking too good. You know, they haven't really played too much of anyone, and they've also struggled a little bit on the way. Same with Ohio State. Ohio State probably has the best resume, beating 2 top 15 teams. So I guess
Right.
that's why they're ranked number 1, but it's going to shake out. And I would even put Oregon over Washington because I think Oregon played better in that game. And I think if they play again in the Pac-12 championship, I think Oregon's going to win that and maybe leapfrog them. But I could see a world where Washington would leapfrog Florida State. And I know people
Mm.
are going to hate me for that, but I think Washington is a way better team than Florida State. I don't know why Washington's number 5.
Well,
Florida
well,
State's
look. All right.
9.
Well, we can tell the truth here. We can. We're not gonna pretend like we know why Washington's number 5, and the committee acts like they're looking at everything year to year, and they're not. Like they're gonna treat the Pac-12 schools and these schools that get, and they're gonna group them all together. And usually, when Washington or these teams in Oregon historically get to the college football playoff, you and I both know what happens. They get smacked by an SEC school or a Big Ten school. And it's unfair to Washington and Oregon this year because I agree with you. Washington and Oregon is probably two of the top four to five teams, probably the top two of the top 4 teams in the country. If you were just to ask me in a vacuum, but they're getting unfair. I don't even know if it's unfair because like we do it all the time in previous college football history. We just go year to year. Like Georgia's going to get the love because of their pedigree, right? Like they're the back-to-back national champions, right? Like even if they obviously don't look as good as the other 2 years for the most part, but we're still going to give them, the number 2 ranking. Should they even be number 2? It probably should be Michigan. They probably looked better, but they're just going to get that. They're going to get that love, and the problem with the Pac-12 school is, I mean, I don't think there's a way that they can get 2 schools into the college football playoff, right? Like one of them is going to get knocked out, just by default in the Pac-12 championship game. But there probably should be 2 in there. That's the problem I do have the rankings. There are probably 2 really good Pac-12 teams that deserve to be in, but only one's going to get in, and the one is even a maybe.
Yeah. That's why the 12 bracket playoff would be good, but now the way they're gonna do that, that's gonna be dumb. You're gonna have like a Tulane, and it's because it's an automatic bid. So Tulane wins.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Tulane wins its conference, and in the American, and they get a bid, and maybe that's gonna spread out some of these conferences and have an effect on conference realignment. Like maybe some of these bigger schools would be like, hey, I want to be in the American because we can win that and get into the playoff every single year. So I don't know, but um, right now someone's gonna get snubbed. Like someone is getting snubbed out of the playoffs this year, whether it be Florida State or Washington or Texas. Texas is in danger right now with Quinn Ewers not coming back, man.
Yeah.
Um, maybe this week they have a tough game at TCU, at Iowa State, and Texas Tech. That if Quinn Ewers needs to get back in a hurry.
Right.
He gets back, he's doing good. And Alabama's looking better than ever, so you can't count them out. They could, play Georgia, and Georgia's got Ole Miss this week too. So it's a
They
big
do.
week. It's a big week.
And I was going to ask you, which of these teams, in terms of the one-loss teams, like who is the most dangerous one-loss team you think of in terms of like, hey, like that's a team I don't want to see? Because like I mean, we discussed Oregon, Texas, Bama. Like I can legitimately see, and I don't put Ole Miss in that category. Probably fair, unfair. Just I don't really view them in that way. But Penn State's also there too. Louisville. Is there any one of those schools that you're like this one-win team? They're probably one of the best 4 or 5 teams, but they just got the loss.
Yeah, are you kidding me? It's gotta be Alabama. It's
Really?
gotta be Alabama. Yeah, I mean, their defense is kinda stepping up. They held LSU to 28. Now Daniels obviously got hurt there in the 4th quarter, but
Mhm.
they still held them to 28 up until 14 minutes in the 4th quarter, and, they were able to score. I think, Jalen Milroe, he's he's running the ball. He's kinda beasting it up, going beast mode right now.
Yeah.
I think, them or I would say Oregon because Oregon's looking Oregon's looking sharp right now.
But here's the thing
Yeah,
with Oregon. I mean, would you really pick them in a game against neutral site against Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State? Like, I mean, I'm asking you in a vacuum, but like, the pause is probably not. I'm assuming, right? Like, that's the hard part, and to be fair, it's they really are physical on both sides of the ball, which is something we don't attribute Oregon to in those type of schools. We just think they're a bunch of speed, but they really have it all. But I just personally, and this is me like just talking venting to you, basically, I can't get over like looking at Oregon as a soft Pac-12 school. That's basically it. Like that's I just have like a bias that I can't get by.
yeah, I do too. I think they are evolving, but then I go back and think about how they almost lost to Texas Tech earlier in the season,
Mm,
and then you know Washington State played them close, but the last 2 weeks they've looked really sharp, blowing out Utah, ending the Rice Eccles Stadium streak for wins there, and they got USC this week, so we'll see if that's a shootout. I think that's a good base right there. If they score about the same amount of points as they did last week against California against USC, then we know if they face a real defense, they're not going to score that many points. If they face a
yeah,
Georgia defense or Alabama or Ohio State, Ohio State's defense is playing out of this world.
yeah.
So I think if they face any of those teams, defense is going to be smothering. But then again, it's like if you got a good enough offense and good enough playmakers, you can score some points still, and I think they could score more than an Ohio State or a Georgia, but Georgia's also looking sharp right now too. So I don't know. That's why this year is so fun. It's such a mess. I love it. I wish it was like a 6 or 8 team playoff this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much parity in the sport. I mean, I guess that's the easy answer, and then the best way to kind of put it. Because I'm looking at these schools, and you can legitimately give me an argument. I mean, you mentioned Bama. I mean, I can mention Texas healthy with Ewers on the right day. I think they can beat anybody in the country. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
on
they
a,
they
on a,
could.
on a neutral site. Yeah. So it's such a funny year. Like Bama, I was not sold on Milrow early on, like most people are, but like you said, he's just kind of like finding ways to win games. Like he seems to be like really good at throwing the deep ball, but then just like everything else, not really. But like if they can hit enough couple of deep shots a game and he can run, I mean, they can kind of win. You know what I mean? So it's like it's kind of hard. Like when I'm watching these schools, the Florida State one is interesting to me because you made a good point. I feel like their resume, it's like one of those things. Their resume has like deteriorated as like the season gone on. Because like when they first beat Clemson in that close game, you're like, oh, they beat Clemson. And then like you look up, Clemson's got like 4 losses, and then they beat Duke, and then like Duke's not like even ranked anymore. So it's like their resume doesn't look great. Even the game they got in Miami versus Miami, it's a rivalry game this week. Miami's not very good. Maybe if it would have been 4 weeks ago, it would have looked different. So even if they do beat Miami and they do go undefeated and they do go to the ACC championship game, it's like you don't really know how good this team really is. I mean, like we know the weapons and like the names and Jordan Travis and stuff like that and Keon Coleman, but like I don't know if they're better than Washington or Oregon. Yet they're gonna be in if they go undefeated, and if Oregon gets upset by USC, they can be a two-loss team that is probably a top four team, but hey, like USC can upset the apple carton, and then Oregon not getting it because and I guess I kind of agree with you what you said earlier. I think Oregon is better than Washington. Like just like flat out, I just think they're a
I
better
think
team
so.
than
even after the head-to-head win, I still think Oregon played better in that game. Yeah.
exactly. And like we watched the same game, and I'm looking like, okay, well, I look, I love Penix and Dunze and all these receivers, but like defensively, Washington wasn't very good, and Oregon wasn't very good in that game either. However, it was a road game, and they had their spots, and they still. I mean, we're just talking about a missed field goal here, like from the, what I mean. We're not even talking about like a game that they lost by like 7 or 14 points. Like we're just
A
talking
missed
a
field
miss
goal and a decision to go for it,
on
and then
fourth down, right?
and
Yeah.
then a
So
missed field
yeah,
goal
we're
in the second or first half. Yeah.
exactly. We're talking about like just a couple plays here and there. That's like a different ball game. And again, on the road, which matters. So I kind of feel like, in a way, I want to see Oregon beat USC just because I want them to be the one loss team if there is one that gets in. Because I just feel like if Washington gets in, I just don't really have enough faith in them playing a Georgia or a Michigan, especially like any of those teams, because I just feel like they'll be able to score points, but I just don't think. I mean, like they've got nobody to guard Marvin Harrison, or I know Georgia doesn't have Brock Bowers, but they still got McConkey and some weapons, and Michigan's really good too offensively. with Blake Corum and that crew. So it's like I don't have the confidence in them, and I do feel like if Oregon plays in one of these games, they can play in one of these games, and I can see a situation where they win a game that's not a shootout per se. So like I guess that's what I'm looking at it with. But look, it's going to be an interesting weekend. So I mean, we'll see how it kind of goes for the most part. Like you said, we'll get a lot of answers to our questions in this week, and then upcoming in the following week as well too. But before we get out of here, man, I did want to talk about the Heisman race because I'm looking at the Heisman odds, and I think it was like I think it was Penix was on top of like plus 280 the last time I looked, plus 250, plus 280, something like that.
Hmm.
I mean, you could probably make a case for three or four different guys, and you being the college football guy, is there a year in recent memory that you can remember that the race being this wide open this late into the year, like where like you can't pinpoint really like one guy for sure? Because I was trying to like look back, and I mean I'd have to remember where I was thinking at those times, but I always had a guy in my head. I'm like, oh, I can kind of see like this guy winning it, and like this year it just feels like this point somebody's just gonna have to win it because they have to award the award. That sounds like so crappy to say, but like that's how I'm feeling about it. There's not one guy that's standing out, but I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to look at. Well, first of all, yeah, it's definitely wide open. You have all these quarterbacks outperforming, the normal. So and they're all like very close together. I don't remember a year where it was this close where you weren't like this is the player right here. But I don't put a lot of stock into the Heisman anymore because it's mostly if your team's done the best and if
Hmm.
you're on that team and you're a quarterback. Like I wish it was a little bit more wide open because I think Brock Bowers should have been in the running. I think Ollie
Marvin?
yeah, Marvin Harrison should be definitely in the running. He's the best wide receiver in the country, and I think even for Oklahoma State, Ollie Gordon, he is going to be
Yeah.
next year, dude. Ollie, ever since Ollie Gordon has been getting the ball over at Oklahoma State, they've been winning. He put up like 273 yards. Not this week against Oklahoma. He put up like 130 or something against Oklahoma, but put up 270 yards the previous week.
Yeah.
He's an animal. He's an animal. But also Jaden Daniels at LSU.
Hmm.
He got hurt, but the man is putting up numbers that are aligning with LSU's 2019 offense.
Right.
That's how good LSU's offense is this year. And they've squandered it by having a defense circa 2020 Florida Gators with Kyle Trask. But uh, it's giving me flashbacks. But I think Jaden Daniels is doing really good. Unfortunately, they've lost 3 games, so he's probably not going to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because, like you said, and that's a good point. The award, it's the Heisman's also become like the NFL MVP award. It's just like it's just a quarterback award, and I know that's the most important position, but it's a little unfair at times because you get a lot of guys that are missing out on the award that we just feel like we have to give it to a quarterback and to one of the best teams in the country. But I guess we're still waiting on that Heisman moment. And like, every Heisman, they got to have that Heisman moment where they play a big game in a big situation. And that's what we think about in that year when they win the award. And I guess none of these guys maybe have had that moment yet. Maybe we will see it. Like I know Penix is in the running. He's got a couple big games coming up. So will he have that moment?
I
Bo
mean, Caleb
Nix.
Caleb Williams in USC, that offense, like they make people look fucking silly.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I was watching the Washington USC game, and I had the over because the over was 76 points. And so I was just hanging out with my friends. They're like, "Who are we rooting for?" I was just like, "Points. We want all the points." And Caleb Williams was running all over the field, breaking ankles. I was like, "This dude is insane." So
Yeah.
I think he should be up there in the top 3, really.
And that's the thing too, because he was in the race right before their recent. I mean, I would say he was kind of falling out of the race before the loss to Washington because of previously. But if you look at it, he's played so well, and like you said, it's almost like a team award because now they've got what, like through almost what 3 losses, 2 or 3 losses. So
Yeah,
it's like
just because Lincoln Riley doesn't have a defense and will never have a defense, Caleb Williams gets to, bear the brunt of that and not be in the top of the Heisman race. This offense is crazy.
right, and then it's like what they hung up 42 points. He hung up 42 points and they lost the game, and it's like he's not in the Heisman race. It's like that's kind of like hard to be like because if you're asking me who's the best player I've seen in the country all year, it's if you don't say him, it's he's the second or third name you name, right? Like it's no matter wins or losses, like you watch Caleb Williams because he's that great and he's played that great. So it's almost. I know he's not going to win the award, and it's unfortunate because the team. So, I mean, I'm looking at the award, and it's like I guess it's got to go down to the teams that are really good and their best players. So, you
Right.
got Penix, like you mentioned, Jaden Daniels. I think Marvin Harrison's really the only non-quarterback that he's not going to win it, but he's the only one that even has a shot of just getting to New York, right? Like just period, because they're that good, and he's their best player by
I would say
far.
give it to Marvin Harrison because he's had to he's had to carry that whole Ohio State offense. Now they didn't have running backs up until a couple weeks ago, so he's just been the sole producer there pretty much.
Here's the only way Marvin gets it to me. He's got to put up historic numbers these last couple of games, and he's got to have like a Sports Center play here and there, and a couple Heisman moments where like maybe it's a game-winning touchdown or something. Like that's the only way he gets it, like this award, unless he just was putting up 2,000 yards. You know what I mean? Like that's the bar is so high for non-quarterbacks. To your point, it's just like he probably should get it because if I'm deciding between Penix, Jaden Daniels, Marvin. I think Jordan Travis is in it, of course, and Bo Nix. Obviously, we got more games to play, but I mean, I hate doing the thing like if the season ended today. But if the season ended today, I probably would really lean towards Marvin because none of the other guys have just, they've all had their great moments, but they've also had their just like okay, they're just like there,
Yeah,
right?
and
They're
like
just
Kyle
executing,
McCord's not that guy.
right? There
So
you
he's
go.
he's doing this with a quarterback who is, the Ohio State fan base is kind of waffled on a little bit. And
Right, and it's like this
nothing.
isn't like good point because this isn't the year where you had the Dwayne Haskins or the C.J. Strouds, right? Like these quarterbacks that were throwing 40 and 50 touchdowns and just like balling out. Like he's got a good quarterback to the standard of what they've had before. So, you know he's got average quarterback play, I think, for the most part, and that's probably being kind at times. I watch Penix, and I hate to be that guy, but I mean, you're playing with two first round receivers, you know what I mean, with an offense. It's kind of hard. I'm not saying that he's executing it to a high level, but it's the Tua conversation, right?
Mm.
Like, how much credit does Tua really get if you're throwing to Tyreek Hill and Waddle? It's unfair, but it's fair, right? Like at the same time.
It
So it's
was
like
like I'm still throwing the Waddle.
right, exactly. So it's like I don't want to like take too much away from it from you, but I can't act like it's the same situation. Jordan Travis. I mean, Keon. I mean, if in any other year, if Marvin Harrison didn't exist, we'd be talking about Keon Coleman like in a whole, you know what I mean? Like it just in a whole different situation, like how good he is. And they got two receivers that are really good and a really good offense to begin with. Bo Nix, he's just playing point guard out there to me. He's just operating, dinking and dunking and doing his thing. Nothing that when I think of Heisman, like no actual moment,
Yeah,
right? So
I,
so
I
then you
went back and watched the Cal game though, and he was kind of saucy with it. He got a receiver
okay.
back.
Oh
Bo was doing good, but Bo has his moments. We used to call him Bo Picks back
well,
when.
yeah, and I guess I can't get that out of my head too. The bow at Auburn is what I can't get out of my head. But yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, it's wide open. I would like to. I don't know. I think I'm with you. I think Marvin Harrison is the best player, but we'll see. We'll see how it breaks down in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we got to see how it breaks down. I mean, we got a lot of big games coming up, so I would love to see a receiver get it, but we probably don't.
I'd like to
We
see an
got to
O
see.
lineman get it. Some at something different.
Or,
Something.
or how about a defensive player and not the cheesy Charles Woodson defensive player that you gotta like actually have the ball in your hands and like punt return and stuff like that. Like how about just like a
Yeah,
Manti Te'o situation, right? Like
like
just a
if
dominant.
Colorado's good and Travis Hunter's playing both sides of the football and he's killing it on both sides of football, how is he not the best player in the country?
Right. That's fair. That's a completely fair argument too. And you can see the difference when he's not on the field as well too. You know what I mean? It was very obvious when he wasn't there, like how much they needed him on both sides. So yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, man, before you get out of here, really quick, what's your too early playoff predictions? Like maybe just give me teams that you see making it all the way to the national championship game. You don't have to give me a winner, but like who do you expect to see when it at the end here?
Um, it it's
We got
tough.
a lot of ball left, so I mean it's kind of an unfair question, but
Yeah, I think right now Florida State unfortunately is a shoe in.
mhm.
Unless they lose to Florida or Miami or Louisville in the ACC championship, which is what that's looking like. I think Florida State's going to get there, and they'll play Oregon, just like in the 2014 playoffs,
Mm.
and they're going to lose to Oregon in the playoffs, just like they did in 2014. That's one prediction, and
Okay.
my next prediction, Georgia beats Michigan.
Okay.
It, I guess we'll go Georgia, Oregon.
And Georgia without Bowers too. So
Yeah. I mean, they looked fine. Their other tight ends are perfect. They're still good. They're not Bowers by any means, but they're still able to make up 75% of what he can do. Now Georgia got to play Alabama, and they still have to play Ole Miss. So that one I'm not too sure about because Alabama could very well be Georgia in the SEC championship, and then we're talking about a whole new,
then we got a whole different conversation. Yeah, then we got a whole different conversation.
and I could see that happening too. That might be a prediction. Maybe Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship, and Kirby's like, "Well, how are you not going to let a one-loss Georgia in?" And then someone gets snubbed.
So okay, so real quick, so let's play that scenario out. Georgia and Alabama are both one-loss teams.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just make it interesting and say Washington has a loss. So you got all these one-loss teams. Let's say Florida State, let's say Ohio State beats Michigan. So obviously one of them is going to lose. So let's say Florida State ends up being the only undefeated team, which is not super likely, but not impossible. Then what do you do? You know what I mean? Like, because do you get two SEC schools in there? Do you split the baby and you get a Pac-12 and SEC, and then just get somebody else in? I mean,
I think you take the Big 12 champion, unless Michigan loses to Penn State. You take either Michigan or Ohio State.
Okay.
Florida State, Oregon, and then your SEC champ. I think Texas has a chance to lose to Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship.
Wow. Okay.
I know. Ollie Gordon's just crazy, but Texas can't stop the run. I don't know. So that's Texas is screwing everything up because if they end up being a one-loss Big 12 champion, you got to put them in. With the win over Alabama, you have to. But it's just weird. It's just weird. So something's got to give, or someone's going to get left out, and it's going to be the fan base is going to be.
And to your point, think about it. You said Ohio State and Michigan. One of them beats the other. The other one's gonna be like, well, I mean, we only lost to them. You know what I mean? So it's tough. Like, how do they get left out too?
Too bad. I think with the 4-team format, that's what it is. It's do or die. Same with Georgia and Alabama. Both of those teams should be in the playoffs.
What was it? Was it last year, or year before? One of them had one, or not both of them. One of them had a one loss and still got in, I believe.
Right.
He lost in the SEC championship game, I think. So it's like, I guess the committee kind of picks and chooses at that point, right? Like, I don't know. It's hard. That's been the issue, right? There's no real criteria. Like, we don't know. Are we going based on strength of schedule? Are we going based off of like pedigree? Like, what? Like, just this year? Like, what are we doing? So,
I think they're flipping coins in there, man. Honestly, I think, and I don't think it's a bad method for this year, to be fair. But, as long as Florida State or Georgia doesn't win, I think I'm gonna be happy. Because as a Gator fan, seeing Georgia and Florida State in the playoffs is just killing me. It's
it's just tough sledding for you, man. No.
It is. It's bad.
Well, yeah, we know at least one of them is going to be in there for sure. But I can't wait for the college football season to definitely we get some answers to it, and it's been exciting, right? Like, we got some controversy, we got some new faces with Coach Prime in Colorado, and then we got parity. Like, I mean, all the stuff that you'd want in the sport, it's coming to a head. So I'm happy to see it no matter what. But
keep betting Iowa unders and Pac-12 overs. That's all I have to say. If you had to take one thing from me, Pac-12 overs, Iowa unders.
Pac-12 overs, Iowa unders. Okay, that's what you've been rolling with all year.
That's what we've been rolling with, and it's been a wagon.
Okay, well, keep that in mind. I mean, a little late in the game to tell us, but we'll put it in this week for sure, man. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, man. But anyway, I want to thank everyone so much for joining us once again. We're gonna drop this for you tomorrow. Wednesday when you get this pod. So let us know what you think in the comments. Of course, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify. Rob, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Of course, man, and filling in. Plug the people, man. Where can we find you? Where can we hear you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. We just switched to a new YouTube channel. It's at CFB Extravaganza, so College Football Extravaganza, and it's like that on Instagram and Twitter or X. And we're on all the podcatchers as well. So if you search College Football Extravaganza, you'll find us on Spotify and all those other things as well. And you can follow my comedy at R. Vincent Comedy as well.
Yeah, plug in the comedy too. 2-in-1. I love it.
Hell yeah. All right. Thank you for having me on, man. This was fun. Always like talking football.
Yeah, man. We love it, man. So thank everybody so much for joining us once again. And until next week, peace.